This morning, the defense is continuing to present its case in the Lindsay Clancy murder trial. The prosecution rested its case yesterday. The mom from Massachusetts admitted to killing her children, but claims she was experiencing postpartum psychosis. Now, yesterday, Clancy's mother and sister testified in her defense. While neither side is denying Clancy committed the killings, the internet is full of conspiracy theories. Many focus on Clancy's mental state, and some, based on misinformation, go so far as to suggest her ex-husband committed the crime.
I want to bring in Catherine Caduto. She is the assistant professor of media science at Boston University. Catherine, thanks so much for joining us. So internet theories have been sort of running wild around this case, including Clancy's ex-husband and her mental health providers. How is one to separate fact from fiction?
It's a great question. And again, thanks for having me. I think this is a really important topic. And it's a really interesting case because people get involved. They get really interested in true crime stories generally. But I think this one is one where people want it to make more sense than it does. I think we often anticipate that mothers care for their children, that they could never harm them. And I think what we're seeing online is people trying to relitigate a case that is already in court. She has already said, I did this. And people want instead to dig a little deeper. And so I think it's really important when you are following a case like this to really pay attention to official sources, to what is being said in the actual courtroom, and not necessarily relying on someone on TikTok who's trying to dig into clues that really don't mean anything, because it's so easy to get lost in the minutia of what might have happened or what could have happened. But again, in this case, we're really focusing on what is being discussed in the courtroom.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, the trial's ongoing. No verdict has been reached, but it already feels like the internet, in many cases, has concluded what they want to believe. And by the way, is not even litigating what the trial is, to your point, right? Like we're trying to figure out whether she had postpartum psychosis, and that's what led to this, not whether she did it or not. Why can, beyond the fascination with true crime, this misinformation, these conversations spread so rampantly? I mean, is it the algorithms? My feed is completely Lindsay Clancy. I'll fully admit that.
Absolutely. Algorithms are playing a huge role in this because regardless of what platform you're on, whether you're following the case on TikTok, if you're communicating about it on Facebook with people you know, all of these companies want you to stay online. They want you to stay engaged. And true crime, and this case in particular, is one that people are really interested in. And so, yes, I think a lot of us have it right now where our algorithms are adapting and making sure that we're still engaged with the case, that we are getting the latest update. Again, even if that is not an accurate update, it's just whatever the latest TikToker has decided to put out. And so algorithms absolutely contribute to the spread of misinformation. What then also contributes is people wanting to jump in and get involved, because if you see someone make a video and either you agree with it or disagree with it, you might jump in and say, well, I can make a video too, because it's so easy to do so. And so the combination of just how much information is out there, how much algorithms help perpetuate this information, and the ability to create your own content, it really all leads to a very messy information environment in a case like this.
You mentioned earlier, Professor, that, we all expect mothers and fathers to be loving, kind parents to their children. Of course, history has proven that's not always the case. But there's another aspect to this story, which is one around mental health. And we were speaking earlier to an attorney, a CBS News contributor, who's an attorney, who mentioned the fact that we are already, when we think about Ms. Clancy, we were already using the language that she had the postpartum psychosis. That's become kind of like baked into the conversation. In other words, the general public feels, because it's so hard for someone to reconcile the heinous act of murdering your children with it not being something that has to do with mental health, right? You don't want to believe that somebody is evil. And that's what her lawyers are arguing, that she had this postpartum psychosis, this illness. How is this case impacting the conversations around mental health?
It's been really interesting to watch. And that's part of how I got interested in studying social media really broadly, was looking at the impacts on people's mental health, on how people handle situations through social media. And so I think that's been almost a better part of this case, is that it does seem to be opening up conversations that really need to be had. And I do feel like that's why you're seeing such a split in, on one hand, seeing conspiracy theories, but on the other hand, seeing people have really frank and honest discussions about things like postpartum depression and psychosis. And I also think that is part of what makes it hard to weed through some of the content, because you might watch one video that is a complete conspiracy theory, but then the next one is really informative about what postpartum psychosis looks like. So it's really, I think, part of why people are so gripped is because there are conspiracy theories, but there is also some really helpful, important content coming out of this. And I think that's part of what happens with social media all the time, right? There's always a little bit of good and a little bit of bad that can come from following things like this.
Right. I mean, it is a really important discussion and a fascinating and very sad case. Catherine Caduto, really appreciate you joining us today and breaking it down.
Thanks for having me.